Holy hell, we've got a lot to talk about in the Championship. This is NTT20's weekend recap, sponsored by Sky Bet and the Sky Bet EFL Building Foundations Fund. It is deadline day as we record, and we've got a 6 p.m. live stream on NTT20.com for all subscribers, both free and paid, of NTT20.com. If you're listening to this and it's already happened, you can still watch back. The link will be there if you head to NTT20.com if you want to listen back on Tuesday. But we're barely going to talk transfers because we've got a resignation, we've got a sacking announced literally 5 minutes ago, and we've got so much to talk about in terms of the matches themselves. George, it was only a couple of weeks ago we did our mid-season predictions, and it felt like we had a top three that was set in concrete, and the only question was which two would finish in the top two. And it was meant to be Coventry and Middlesbrough and Ipswich, but unless I'm looking at a faulty league table, looks to me like currently in third place, Hull City with 8 wins in their last 10.
I had no idea that Set in Stone had another level until you just said it. So that's good. Hull.
What's harder than stone? Concrete.
Is it?
Big time.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Can't argue that.
I can't argue that. Hull are third, and Hull are third off the back of a 1-0 win away from home against Blackburn Rovers. It was a win that I think, for once, even Hull fans would probably say wasn't necessarily their best performance of the season. But the goal that was scored from Lewis Kumas, making his debut off the bench, was the end of a very good free-flowing move, a brilliant ball from Carl Joseph around the corner to Kumas. You know, angles that have come out since the game suggest that Kumas was offside, but he finished really well. And in fairness, Joseph should have made it too shortly afterwards to put a gloss on the scoreline. Hull started the better team in the game. Blackburn came into it a bit. They never really carved out anything clear cut. Todd Cantwell probably should have been sent off in the first half him and Ollie McBurney had a bit of a coming together. Both fell over, and Cantwell gets up and then kind of waits for McBurney to get up so that he can kick him on his way up, and then trots off. And weirdly, the referee sees it, gives him a yellow card. One of those where, like, if you see that, surely it's just a red.
Yeah.
But you know, the whole narrative is obviously very strong at the moment because this is a team who all season have been labelled lucky, and surely it's going to turn unsustainable. That wasn't even scripted. And there was a piece that was put up on NTT20.com written by our very own Sam Parry that I think you and I are both very proud of. Given that we didn't write it, but NTT20 is our written offering, I can't think of anywhere in the world where a piece of that quality would be published, because frankly, publications probably look at clicks and only clicks, and therefore aren't that interested in posting a long read about Hull City's underlying numbers unless it's local press. And naturally, local press are going to be pretty dismissive of underlying numbers when it doesn't suit the team that they're talking about. And Sam does a real deep dive. I don't necessarily personally agree with all the conclusions, I should say as well, but it's a deep dive in basically why Hull's underlying numbers can be misleading, and why within the numbers themselves there are elements to be positive about, such as the fact that they've taken the lead 18 times now this season, which is the second most behind Coventry, such as how the goal scoring streaks of McBurney and Gelhardt might look unsustainable, but actually they are players who consistently shoot on target, which is a big thing. So even though the chance creation and shot numbers for Hull are pretty low, their shots on target are actually the fourth most in the league, which is quite a good way to score goals. That their underlying numbers from a defensive standpoint are actually kind of bang in line, where they concede a lot of chances, but also concede a lot of XG, and they concede a lot of goals, but it doesn't seem to matter to them. So I think the outpouring of praise for the piece from Hull fans has been really good to see, because naturally when we sit here and we talk about Hull and their underlying numbers, it can be frustrating for Hull fans who've consistently been to watch their team win games this season and now third in the league. And the irony is that this is a game where I think between both boxes, especially for that kind of middle hour, Hull didn't look particularly good and didn't look very good going forward. But actually, this is the one game where, if you look at the underlying numbers, they absolutely dominated. Like the chance quality they created within the game is much better than Blackburn's, even though they were a long way through the game where they weren't necessarily in control. So, we're getting to a point now where surely Hull's points on the board give them a huge chance, not only of finishing the top 6, but challenging for the top 2. But I would just, my own caution is, yes, McBurney and Gelhardt are good finishers, but I don't think I don't think they're Harry Kane. I don't think they're players who are going to blitz their underlying numbers consistently over the course of their career. And if we see a regression from either in terms of their finishing, then things might get a bit worse. But I do think Hull look like a better team defensively for the most part. And if you take out those 2 Vipotnik chances against Swansea, they've looked solid defensively now for a few weeks.
Yeah, I think they have improved defensively, which is probably partly why it's 8 wins in 10. Like, it's not... The performances early on this season were fairly volatile, and the results were relatively volatile as well. And now they're getting much more consistent. Kumas had 5 goals in 66 championship appearances before joining Hull. But when you join Hull, you get the footballing equivalent of a star on Mario Kart. And so, of course, he scored in his 10-minute cameo off the bench to win the game. Hugh pointing out that some of the Hull conversation, I think, is a conversation about the championship as a whole as well, and the type of league it is this year. It's a messy league, and Hull are very comfy in the mess. They like messy football matches. They thrive within that, like a pig in its own manure. Hugh's stat was, of the 9 teams that face the most shots on target in the championship, 4 are in the top 6 as it stands, and the other 2 who are in the top 6 face the least amount. So just quite messy. Lots of teams who face lots of shots on target and are still doing very, very well. Blackburn have sacked Valérien. I was going to say off the back of this. That is both literally true, but it's really off the back of a run of 14 games George, in which they've won 1, drawn 7, lost 6, slid into the relegation zone. Good performances from early in the season, kind of melting away the bad energy which has lingered in the background and occasionally in the foreground at Rovers for quite some time, is now out in full force once again. And these incredibly unpopular owners and those that run the club have chosen to roll the dice and try and get someone else in to help them stay up. What do you make of it?
Yeah, inevitable now. I think had this decision been made 6 weeks ago, I'd have really disagreed with it. There's always a bit of a weird dynamic when a manager leaves their role at the end of a window, because you have to hope, and in this case Rudy Chested has been recruiting players to fit what Valérien Ismaël wants. Like, I'm definitely a big believer in the fact that managers shouldn't be in charge of recruitment, but also when you are recruiting as a recruitment team, you have to be bringing in what the manager wants, or at least what you think the manager should be wanting. Mm-hmm. And so therefore making a change on deadline day means that, you've built a squad to play a certain way or for a certain manager. Do you therefore go out and you try and recruit someone who wants to play in a similar way to Ismaël? But, Ismaël's journey as a head coach in the EFL has been pretty confusing, because no one in the history of us doing the podcast has ever had it's probably him and Bielsa in terms of the 2 styles of play who have been the most obvious. His Barnsley team and Bielsa's Leeds team. Yeah. In terms of if you were watching those teams, you knew exactly what you were getting and you knew exactly what you were watching. It was a kind of an attempt to recreate Barnsley at West Brom, where the results weren't terrible, but the fans weren't particularly happy with it. We saw a very clear shift in the style of play early on at Watford with a heavy possession approach, which kind of then fizzled out into a bit of a nothing approach. And then it feels like with Blackburn, we kind of just got the continuation of the nothing approach. Like, the underlying numbers were pretty good to start the season, but I wouldn't say there's been necessarily a discernible style of play. It hasn't been like an aggressive.
There was a period where I would say stuff like Blackburn attacking on the counter-attack with great precision and speed are excellent to watch, but it wasn't... Even that itself wasn't something that you saw every single game.
No.
That was like occasionally, every other game maybe, it looked like they were excellent. And in reality, it was heavily predicated on how the opposition played against them. And I think once teams looked at that and thought, right, we can't afford to give the ball away in midfield against Rovers, once that avenue had been closed to them, they've looked completely at odds. They've not been helped with injuries, but then I think with Ismaël's demand for incredible amounts of running and the players that they signed in the summer, a lot of them very impressive physical traits when they're on the pitch, but not many of them had proven themselves to be able to cope physically with this league's schedule, which is one of the hardest leagues, possibly even the hardest league in the world to play in physically. And many of them have kind of ended up getting injured after a couple of months, and so haven't been able to make an impact recently.
Yeah, exactly. And I think there's also an element where Cantwell started the season very strong, and then his form tails off. And if you've got a player who is probably amongst the best in terms of kind of technical ability in a league, who is also massively prone to long periods of being out of form, and they stop firing, it's going to have a big impact. Talk of Tony Mowbray returning there, which, despite what happened at West Brom last season, I love him. And I think that he's someone who, coming into a fan base are disillusioned with what's going on at the club, coming into a group of players who look pretty, down on confidence, he can come in and breathe a bit of life into them. But, it didn't work out that way when he went to West Brom last season. So we'll have to see. But it definitely feels like there's been a big downturn in terms of Rovers' performances recently, where, again, it didn't feel to me like Ismaël was a problem a few weeks ago, but it's got to the stage now where they have to do something.
Bristol City 0, Derby 5. Blackburn Rovers former manager John Eustace left Blackburn Rovers for Derby when Rovers were just outside the playoffs, I think it was, and Derby were in and around the relegation zone. People questioned why he did that. It now looks absolutely genius 1 year on. His Derby side were, for a short period, because of playing on Friday night and winning, in the playoff places before being knocked out once again. I mean, this is their biggest away league victory since September 1959. Just an unbelievable Friday night in Bristol for the county fans. It's a continuation of a recent theme on the road. 10 points from their last 12 available on their travels. The best away record in the division, and they were 2-0 up after 16 minutes, scoring 2 of their first 4 shots. Cross from the left finished by Brewster. Another quick transition attack after a turnover finished off by Brereton with the aid of a deflection. Bobby Clark looking really good in an advanced midfield role, supporting attacks from deep, making late runs in behind and making the most of space that's being created by Adjumang, who just has to take so much attention because he's looking so dangerous in the number 9 role. I've banged on quite a lot about Adjumang. I just want to point out that Carlton Morris's injury at the point where he'd scored a really large proportion of their goals this season was one of those where you worry about the team after that because the top scorer gets injured. But it happens fairly frequently in football that your top scorer getting injured doesn't always necessarily mean the team itself scores fewer goals, even though that seems intuitive. The big one that always springs to mind is Andy Cook last January for Bradford. Tears his ACL, I think it was on New Year's Day. He had scored something like 30% of Bradford's goals for the last 2.5 seasons. So he goes down for the rest of the season, and the concern is, well, who's going to score our goals?
Where are we going to find those 30 goals from?
Yeah, the team, it turned out. All of the other players in the team.
It's such a false currency to use that as like a swap in, swap out.
I think this is another good example of it. Like Morris obviously was doing a good job in front of goal, scoring he started the season on a hot streak in front of goal. But Morris's mobility is very, very poor for the level, you have to say. He does fight well with centre-backs, wins a lot of free kicks. He's a decent target man if you can get it, pretty much straight at him. Adjumang is just a completely different prospect in so many ways. He can still do the aerial stuff, but he can cover just so much more ground, so much quicker. He's so much better on the ball, and Derby are just looking so much better as an attacking unit, kind of with that. They get loads from the crossing quality of their fullbacks. I don't think any team in the Championship would look at Joe Ward and Callum Elder, their fullbacks, and think, oh, I'm a bit jealous of the fullbacks that Derby have got. But Eustace is doing that great thing that great managers do. What are their strengths? Crossing. Make the most of it. Like, try and hide them defensively and the fact that physically they're not both incredible. And he does that really well with good out-of-possession shape. But make the most of the fact that they're both excellent crossers of the ball and make sure they've got good targets in the middle. And guess what? Good stuff happens. Both got an assist here. And then the bench players, it was a bit unfair for Bristol City because they were already dead. And then off the bench came Salverson, Fraulo, the youngster Eames making his league debut, who I'm really excited to see more of, and Weimann. And they just brought even more energy, even more press, even more intent to attack. And there was the 4th and 5th goals as well. It was a bit brutal, to be honest. Bristol City's back 3 of Tanner, Dickey and Pring were all over the place, but not helped much by those in front of them, I think it's fair to say. So for Derby, it's proper, like, keep your eye on Derby territory. It has been for a few weeks. Like, offensively, they have improved so much. 5 of their best attacking performances of the season in terms of non-penalty XG created have come in the last 10 games. That shows the trend. And 3 of those have been away games as well, at Charlton, at PNE, and now this, just creating loads. So what's the catch? Well, they've only won 4 of their 15 home games this season. So you might think, unless they improve at home, it is unlikely that they will break into the top 6, even though they're on the cusp right now. Every team in the playoff chase has something wrong with them, right? Otherwise they'd be in the automatic promotion battle, and they're not at the moment. So really interesting to see whether the home form might improve, in which case Derby will make the playoffs. I think it's pretty clear, or whether kind of reality comes to bite, and maybe this is just one of those hot spells that teams have so many teams have had them. Watford spring to mind of recently. If you buy right into a team that's won 4 in a row in this championship, the reality is they're probably about to go on a run where they don't win 4 in a row. As for Bristol City, I think there's a really interesting piece to be written, or maybe a video or a pod to be done on Bristol City right now, because like the vibes are horrendous. A 5-0 home defeat. Zach Viner leaving on the cheap for Wrexham because his contract's up in the summer, just like Mehmeti leaving on the cheap for Ipswich because his contract up in the summer. The Semenyo sell-on fee having been received, kind of burning a hole in their pocket, but not outwardly being spent in this window. Also, the fact an £18 million loss has just been announced for last season seems relevant context to bring up. The owner, Lansdowne, did an interview on Friday, which really annoyed people. There's been chance of sack the board. At the same time, they've got quite a popular manager. They've got a generally decent team that overachieved last season, made the playoffs for the first time in 20 years. And then this season, they're still in the mix, despite the fact that the manager who got them there walked out on them. So I think from a neutral's point of view, they are absolutely fascinating at the moment. I'd love to kind of deep dive into it at some point, because I think it's a fairly complicated picture when you scratch the surface. George, let's talk about our top 3. It was a significant weekend. 1-1, 1 drew, 1 lost. Boro 1, Norwich 0.
Boro won thanks to a magnificent strike from Hayden Hackney, a player that, as we record, is kind of being tenuously linked to a move to the Premier League with Nottingham Forest. It would seem to me, obviously money is money, and there has to come a point where Middlesbrough would sell. But if Boro, in the position they're in, having just drawn alongside Coventry in terms of a points tally, were to then sell their star asset on deadline day without the time to replace him properly, it would remind me a little bit of when Jared Bowen and Kamil Grzycki left Hull on deadline day in mid-table and they ended up getting relegated. A brilliant hit. It was a game of kind of few clear-cut chances. Hackney strike from outside the area into the top right-hand corner, kind of through bodies, was the one moment of quality. In it, Jovan Makama looked really lively up front for Norwich. His goals speak for themselves, of course, and he's clearly one of the breakout players in the Championship this season. But kind of the more I see of him, the more I do wonder just how good he might be. He just covers ground so easily, leads the line incredibly well, very good with his back to goal, but also just so dangerous when he's kind of running in on goal. And even though he failed to put any of his chances away, he was a constant threat and had a couple of shots really well saved by Bryn. But apart from those opportunities, Norwich were unable to really create too much. I think that's good for Boro and good for Kim Hellberg. That's now having been a team that can often let the opposition in despite being so good going forward, as we saw against West Brom, where they were 2-0 up and drew 2-2, going behind against Stoke before kind of wrestling back the game and winning it 2-1. That's now 2 games in a row against Preston and Norwich where they've taken the lead and basically never looked back. And even though it was only a 1-0 win, they were pretty comfortable throughout despite Makama's threat. So, it was a big win for them, a huge weekend for Middlesbrough given what happened elsewhere.
And Ipswich dropping points at home to PNE. What I find interesting about this one is been a lot of focus from Ipswich fans that I've spoken to about the fact that they are about to have a run of almost exclusively away games, and their away record this season not very good. 4 straight away games, and it always felt a bit like we got Preston at home, and then we've got these really hard away games, and inevitably football slaps you in the face because they didn't win that one. Yeah,
this was, obviously the means of the point for Ipswich with Clark scoring the penalty very late on will give it a good feel. But going into this game at home, given how strong they've been at home up against the Preston side that really struggled, this is quite clearly 2 points dropped. Not necessarily loads wrong in the performance. The first half they were poor and really struggled to create too much. Ipswich, Gibson scoring to put Preston ahead with 20 or so minutes to go, and then they kind of turned the screw. A couple of decent opportunities were saved when George Hurst came on for us on at half time. Ipswich were much improved, and I anticipate that he'll probably be leading the line from now on. Blushes spared, I guess, with a late pen, but definitely a big opportunity missed with what happened in the Coventry game.
Coventry lost at QPR right in front of my eyes. And let me tell you, Loftus Road was rocking on Saturday. It was pretty infectious stuff, I must say, sitting in the Stanley Bowls. Big revenge for them after the 7-1 defeat earlier on in the season, which for QPR fans felt pretty embarrassing, to be honest. Certainly plenty of glee at beating Frank Lampard with his Chelsea connections. Incredible the proportion of QPR fan chants that mention Chelsea is very notable, I must say. It must be right up there in terms of proportion of chants that mention another football team. I'd like to check that across the land.
Interesting.
How many Oxford fan chants mention Swindon?
Very many.
Yeah.
None mention Reading.
And how many mention Jim Smith? One.
He's got no hair, but we don't care.
Yeah.
But also he had a submarine, so 2, maybe a couple of others.
2 Jim Smiths, 10 Swindons. First half was 0-0. My notes were, what's Gary Lineker doing here? Couldn't tell you, but I was walking up towards the top of the stand bowls. My mate grabbed my coat from behind, and as I turned to see what he wanted to say, someone else looked at him and went, "Yeah, it is him. It is him." And quite a fun moment this, where you're walking up some stairs at a football ground, and someone says to you, "Yeah, it is him." Who was I expecting? I was like, maybe like
QPR.
I actually think I thought maybe Beckham.
Wow.
Don't know why.
Yeah, it is him.
Well, like, there aren't many people in the world that would have a random go like, it is him.
How many times do you reckon when Gary Lineker goes to a game, even now, people say to him, "Oi, Gary, we could do with you on there."
yeah. I mean, Cov fans might have felt it because their strikers made next to no impact. But QPR fans wouldn't be swapping King Kone for anyone after this, let me tell you. Most fun thing that happened in the first half was every Coventry corner, QPR put 3 players on halfway to defend their corners. And like, I loved it so much because, I love random stuff like goalkeepers going up for corners when it's only 1-1 in a regular season game. Putting 3 attackers on halfway. It was funny because the first time Coventry all trotted up for the corner and then they were getting screamed at for 2 of them to go back because otherwise it was going to be 3-on-1. It worked. It just in isolation, small sample size. Let's say Cov had 5 or 6 corners. It worked well in that they headed every single one away and then generally dealt with the bits and pieces on the edge. And then there were 2 occasions where they built genuinely quite dangerous counterattacks, which didn't lead to any goals. I couldn't help but feel if Bobby Thomas had just jumped up and headed one in, thumping header without like much marking around him, it might have been quite an easy stick to beat him with. So watch this space in terms of whether this might be a trend. I hope it is, because football's going to be more high scoring if every set piece has 3 attackers and 3 defenders on halfway and way fewer people inside the box. But it's quite a poor pitch and it wasn't a great game, to be honest, because it kind of felt to me like everyone just needed an extra beat to actually control the ball and pass the ball, and some passes were quite wayward as a result of the pitch. So 0-0 at half-time, QPR having had a pretty big penalty shout, Smith taken down by Grimes, not given. That was all the rage at half-time. And then Cov went ahead, 1-0, Eccles, back stick, header from a Rodoni cross. And even though it's the league leaders and even though they're 1-0 up and even though they beat this same team 7-1 a few months ago, it just never felt that convinced that they were going to see it out from there. Madsen got in down the right-hand side, put a ball across to Kone just behind him. No matter. Kone back heel, far corner, right in front of me. Absolutely brilliant from Kone, who'd been excellent all game. QPR then got in down the left, a really good counter-pressing from Norrington Davis, who must have work rate 20 on Football Manager. Just love Norrington Davis. A nice cross was parried to Madsen, who smashed it into the roof of the net to win the game. So Madsen's kind of the headline star because he gets the goal and the assist in the 2-1 turnaround win. I read Loft for Words, that's Clive, incredible writer about QPR, suggesting that Madsen might be currently their Player of the Year candidate, which is kind of amazing. Wow. The QPR fans sing, "He used to be shite and now he's all right," walking in a Madsen wonderland. But I felt Kone was the most important player in the game, the most impactful player in the game. The physical battle with Thomas and Kitching, he did a really good job securing the ball, laying it off, letting QPR relieve pressure by going long into him. Almost scored, was denied by a great save from Rushworth, then did score and rightly took a lot of praise at the end. So it was a really interesting game from a neutral point of view. I thought Harvey Vale had a nice game in the number 10 role, 2 really crucial bits of play in both goals. And mainly, I just want to shout out the Crown and Scepter, which is, what a pub that is, by the way. Absolutely loved it. So, big story is obviously Coventry and the wobble. It's no win in 7 away games. I didn't think they were a horrendous football team that looked like they had absolutely no idea what to do, but it all looked a little bit methodical. It looked a little bit pre-prescribed, and teams just aren't finding it as difficult to defend against them at the moment. And I kind of feel like that happened a bit at the end of last season, and it's something that Lampard's going to have to work out. Every single team that's ever been going for the title in the Championship has a different challenge in the second half of the season compared to the first half of the season. Ask Leeds, ask Burnley last season. The vibe of your matches changes completely based on how the opposition defend against you, how much more respect they give you, and therefore how much less space they give you. And then there's the psychological aspect, nerves, tension, all that sort of stuff. They have to get over that hurdle. And Cov fans that I spoke to afterwards currently feel like they won't possibly get over the hurdle and they'll just keep sliding. I think we know this league well enough to know that I don't think it's all done for Cov just because they've now been caught by Boro. I think there's every chance they find something again. Late winner in the next game. Suddenly the vibe changes. I will be watching very, very closely. They're definitely not playing that well right now. Millwall drew 1-1 with Sheffield United. Andre Brooks with a nice goal to put Sheffield United ahead. Then a big Caleb Taylor knockdown was stabbed in by Mihailo Ivanovic for 1-1. Looked to me like Sheffield United maybe had the better chances at 1-1. Cannon went close. O'Hare twice. Not making the most of good opportunities, but a 1-1 draw in what looked like a pretty good and even game. Also in the playoff places, George, Wrexham. They went to Sheffield Wednesday. They won 1-0.
Yeah, I watched this game, early kickoff, and having put Wrexham up on the betting show, and the first half didn't really go the way I expected it to at all. I thought Wednesday, despite not creating loads, were really good in the game, and Wrexham kind of had a lot of the ball, but couldn't really break them down. Obviously, Bannon's first game out of the Wednesday side, in a way, I think out of possession, it kind of maybe impacted them from a positive way. Obviously, they're going to lose a lot in terms of ball playing abilities and his creative abilities, but they were kind of bang at it, and Wrexham couldn't really find a way through. Kakache and Kabore out wide. In time, like in moments, got in some space and could put balls in, but they never really caused many issues. And actually, the best chance of the first half fell to Jerry Yates, making his debut on loan at Wednesday from Luton, who was set clear and he kind of struck the ball over the bar and was taken out afterwards. It's one of those I've spoken a lot in the pod before about when fouls come after a shot's off and they're never given as a penalty, which I hate because it doesn't make any sense. Like, you got your shot away, so if you get your pass away, it doesn't mean that you don't get, when you get fouled, it's not a free kick. And Yates, for once, because normally players don't really appeal. Yates really wanted the penalty and ran straight to the referee who didn't give it. It probably should have been a penalty in my mind. But the second half was very, very different. Straight away in the second half, Wrexham looked at a different side. This is a bit of a trend we're seeing with Wednesday. It's not surprising. They have a small squad. They've got a young squad. I think they just get very tired. It was the same when Bristol City came. When they went to Bristol City, when it was 0-0 at half-time, they lost the game 2-0. Sam Smith scored a well-worked goal, a tap-in from close range after some good play down the right from Kabore. He had another couple of opportunities that were well saved. Wednesday came close to equalising. Okonkwo made a decent save. From Kadamatri, who looks like might have been playing his last game for Wednesday as well, with him being linked to the move.
For Wrexham.
For Wrexham, indeed.
Reportedly.
Had that gone in, he could have been damaging the Premier League hopes of his new employer.
Yeah.
But, Wrexham didn't have a shot in the last 15 minutes or so. But they won the game pretty comfortably in the end, albeit, I think, for Wrexham fans and for Parky probably too, they'd have hoped it might be a bit easier, I guess, to get over the line. But they stay sixth after a good away win. Yeah,
down at the bottom, some pretty significant results. Perhaps most of all, George, Portsmouth 3, West Bromwich Albion 0.
Yeah, pretty wild this.
Yeah.
Let's focus on the positives first, eh? Mm-hmm. Let's talk about
Portsmouth positives.
Pompey before we get into the absolute shambles that is West Bromwich Albion at the moment. Pompey go above West Brom. West Brom now the team above the relegation zone in 21st. How has that happened? We're going to get to them later. Conor Chaplin, who hadn't scored a goal for Portsmouth this season. Their kind of big marquee signing from the summer, a player that was a key player for Ipswich, maybe the key player, or at least one of the very key players in their promotion out of the league a couple of seasons ago.
One of the keyest of players. I worked out this was his 50th shot for Pompey this season and his first goal. If you'd have told us and Pompey fans,
I know,
upon signing that Chaplin wouldn't score until his 50th shot.
And what a shot. Swept in with his left foot past the dive of O'Leary in goal. A decent finish, and it was followed up very quickly. Just an unbelievably good defence-splitting pass from Andre Dezelle, setting Miliali off down the left-hand side, who finished again. And I think O'Leary not endearing himself to West Brom fans early on, because I think the feeling probably is he should have done better from that tight angle. If you're going to ask me right now who the best January signing in the window has been so far, Ebou Adams,
Wow.
without question.
Yeah.
A player who has scored, is it 3 goals now in his very short stay
Definitely
so far?
2.
Yes, a famous one against Southampton.
Yeah.
Scores a third here. The Pompey fans absolutely loving him for what he brings, both in terms of his tenacity, but also the quality on the ball, goal scoring at the moment, apparently, and just that kind of character that when you're in a relegation scrap, someone who G's up his players, the fan base. We saw he ran across the pitch to celebrate in front of the Pompey fans against Southampton, and he got the third. And the key thing here for me, the most impressive thing for me from Pompey, is that they restricted West Brom to basically nothing. Baggies had 4 shots in the game despite being 1-0 down after 90 minutes. So, West Brom. I cannot think of a manager who has not just lost the fan base, but has united a fan base so overwhelmingly against them in such a short space of time than Eric Ramsey. And I'm not saying that's justified. I'm not saying it's not justified, but it's just startling to see. And obviously, emotions are running high after a 3-0 away win where you haven't, you haven't really threatened at all. But to see the West Brom fans unite in singing Eric Ramsey, your football is bad, is quite something. To see the way that Isaac Price, who at the beginning of the season after West Brom's relatively promising start was quite clearly their best player, standing there and having to be restrained and not confronting the West Brom fans, who obviously turned on him for his show of, him retaliating, showing his own displeasure at the treatment from the fan base. West Brom picking up 1 point from his first 4 games in charge, and even that came with a 95th minute equaliser, who've been beaten 5-0 and 3-0 in 2 of the games so far. This just couldn't be going worse. And I don't know what West Brom do from here. They've already shown with Ryan Mason a willingness to maybe be more patient towards a head coach or a manager than most would have been. It took them probably longer to make the call, I think, than a lot of other clubs. In Ramsey, they've hired someone who has had success as a head coach before with Minnesota in the MLS.
But talking about they as the decision makers, even that feels like it's changing, because on Sunday, the reports coming out, there's essentially been some sort of civil war at board level, which is expected to end with the president and sporting director, Andrew Nestor, who's basically been the face and the mouthpiece of the owner since they came in, will be leaving the club. So there's obviously been a massive disagreement within the hierarchy as well. It all adds to a feeling of chaos. And when a club feels untethered like this, obviously it impacts what a manager is trying to do. Obviously it impacts how the players are playing and the sort of security that they feel in the environment. And then it gives the fans the heebie-jeebies as well, along with the performances. And this could be rock bottom. I mean,
or there could be more trouble to come. Yeah. I mean, West Brom they're kind of the reverse Hull, where fans have been saying they're rubbish all season. Underlying numbers have been okay most of the season. In terms of, we often talk about this. I know it's not for everyone, but you can glean quite a lot about what price teams go off in betting markets, because betting markets are very informed, whether or not you care about betting or not. They are, the reason why, if you hate betting, it's probably because people lose money. The reason why people lose money is because prices are generally pretty accurate, right? So using pricing as a benchmark to judge a team can often be pretty useful. And West Brom all season, and especially in the last few months, have been priced up as kind of a top 8, maybe even top 6 team. They are clear favourites at home to Stoke on the weekend. I'm pretty sure we're clear favourites here against Portsmouth on Saturday. Yet since Mason left, and certainly in the Norwich game, under Mason we didn't see anything anywhere near as incompetent as this performance against Portsmouth. So where do you go from here? This is the second manager of the season. This is a fan base who feel completely alienated from the manager, the ownership group who came in to kind of be the new big hope for West Brom, from the team itself as well, by the looks of things, of the scenes of the final whistle. They are in huge trouble. And I have no idea what the next step is, because I would absolutely not advocate for the sacking of a manager after 4 games. But it feels like there is a complete breakdown of relationships across the football club, and that cannot be a good thing.
Yeah. I'm the only sort of positive, and it's not specific to West Brom, but it's worth pointing out that over the course of the season so far, and we've still got a third of it to go. Norwich, you may remember, lost 7 home games to start the season, felt like the worst thing in the world, felt like everyone was just horrendous and they were certainly going to get relegated, and then now look like one of the better teams in the league. Portsmouth at one point hadn't won for, it felt like, many, many months. All the players were playing poorly, some murmuring question marks about the legend that is John Mousinho, and lots turning to look at the owners and a lack of ambition, and then a couple of signings and a couple of better results, and suddenly they're looking up again. You know, it generally doesn't always last forever, this, but good God, it's painful at the time for West Brom, no doubt about that. A couple of good away wins. Charlton at Leicester, 2-0 winners, avenging that game in the first part of the season where Charlton dominated Leicester, only for Fatawu to do one of his big worldies for an undeserved victory. They were given a helping hand, literally, by Okoli, the Leicester defender. When we were watching the highlights together this morning, I shouted, "What are you doing?" when I saw him pulling back Miles Leaburn on halfway when Leaburn was running clear but still had so much to do and isn't the speediest striker around. Okoli sent off and Charlton going on to win. Sonny Carey with what I'm calling an accidental Gaza versus Scotland. His first touch looped the ball over the defender's head and he smashed in on the volley. I'm not necessarily sure he meant to do that, but it looked pretty good. And then the second goal was about new boys. Chambers, the left wing back on loan from Liverpool, crossing for Lyndon Dykes. Clark, the right back, Harry Clark, the right wing back, had a good game too here. So new signings doing the business for Charlton here. For Leicester, Ayew hit the post with a penalty. I mean, he's already the subject of quite a lot of ire from the stands, and it was just one of those horrible moments where you feel like you can kind of see it coming, and then the reality is just as bad as you expect. Just desperate stuff, really, for Leicester at the moment. They don't have a new manager yet. The current bookies odds and reporting are a bit confusing, where Maresca's name is for some reason near the top of that list, despite the fact that surely he would be...
We're in a situation where there is the same favourite for the Manchester City job as the Leicester City job.
What a world.
It's not happening. I can understand why the Leicester owners might say, "Oh, Enzo, you had such a good time here. Do you want to come back?" And I reckon he probably just turned his phone off.
Yeah. No, not really.
No, I doubt he even said that.
Good luck, guys. Charlton, though, big win for them. Benefit of beating a team with 10 men in the first half. Their only other win since Christmas came against Sheffield United, who had 9 men by half-time. This one was a bit different in that they were legitimately playing well before the red card, unlike at Sheffield United or versus Sheffield United. And they're now 6 points clear of the bottom 3, so making the most of those opportunities that they've had in the last few weeks. But it'd be good to see them beat a team with a full complement at some point. And then Swansea beating Watford away from home. A time and corner, a flick from the Viper, stabbed in by Stamanic, who then set up Key for second goal, as Swansea just sort of strode off with quite a comfy win. And I think that was partly because Watford just folded, and that was partly because their manager, Javi Gracia, basically just decided he couldn't be asked.
Yeah.
What's happened here is Gracia's resigned, and when a Watford manager leaves, like, there's always the usual round of gags that'll do the rounds. It'll be their third manager of the season in Feb. They're just outside the playoff places. It's all, so far so very Watford. But like in this instance, I sort of have some sympathy, which is rare for those who run Watford, because it basically sounds like Javi Gracia, and this is me really paraphrasing an excellent and detailed piece from Adam Drury, who's a terrific Watford reporter. It kind of sounds like after a couple of months of getting the job, he genuinely can't be asked to carry on, and he just doesn't think
I don't need this.
He doesn't need it. And there's not as much to work with as he was expecting. And some of the players that he doesn't want to play are the players that maybe his bosses would like him to play. And he's just gone like, hey, why don't I just step away? So Watford looking for a new manager, Charlie Daniels, Dan Gosling and Adrian Mariappa. A few old boys who are taking charge of the first team for the game against Hull on Tuesday. As for Swansea, bigger piece to be done on Matos and his impact at Swans at some point. 7 wins in his first 14 games and moving away from relegation fears.
Unbelievable job he's done.
another club for West Brom to look at and go like, sometimes it looks like you'll never win again, and then you win half of your next 14 games and move away from it. Massive fair play to him, but slightly overshadowed by Gracia's resignation. George, Oxford 0, Birmingham 2 must have made you sad.
Yeah. Yeah.
A lot of positives from a Birmingham point of view around some of their new players. Solis in midfield, Osman on the left wing, obviously Wagner, who joined early in the window and is doing well. And I've seen all sorts of kind of fun adjectives used to describe what Vicente did, new Spanish winger, in the build-up to the second goal.
Yeah. Yes,
Good
sorry,
win.
I'm joking. Yeah, I mean, Birmingham were by far the better team in this. Oxford made quite a good start in the first 10 minutes or so before Birmingham took the lead through a free kick. The gripe from fans and myself will be that the free kick was taken, there was a foul like on the touchline, almost out of play, and the free kick was then taken about 7 yards inside, which enabled the free kick taker to fire one, like a cross-come shot, which was diverted home by Pert Harris, which just wouldn't really been possible with the left foot had it been the other side. But I mean, who really cares? Because Birmingham were by far the better team. As you say, Dutch scored with a really good finish, but some brilliant kind of very good vision and set up by Vicente, who had just come on off the bench. Stansfield had a decent chance that was saved. Osman had one very good chance that Brodie Spencer did very well to kind of divert onto the post. Beadle made a decent save from Ola Romney late on, but it probably wouldn't have made much of a difference. Oxford, this has been my kind of gripe all season, where we set up to play 3-4-3 against Leicester, and it really worked because, as I say, the kind of the way we were able to press their defensive line and also the kind of the defensive-minded wing-backs up against Fatawu and Mavidi kind of worked. But we then went in with the same system against Birmingham with Matt Phillips playing as left wing-back. I just don't think this Oxford squad, as it stands at the moment, it should be the default formation. I think it should be a 4-2-3-1 with the capability to switch into this 3-4-3 when needed. And Mark Harris led the line again because he scored last time out, and I don't see why Will Lancashire couldn't have come back into the team. Those are my gripes with Oxford. It was another occasion of a good performance followed up by a poor performance. It's going to be a tricky week now with a visit to Sheffield United on Tuesday night, followed by a trip to Coventry on Saturday. Birmingham's away form is much better now, which is going to be important for them. A couple of wins against Sheffield Wednesday and Oxford, who are 24th and 23rd in the league, but at least doing those wins and winning those games show them that they are capable of putting good performances away from home. And they are a team who, in a decent run of form at the moment, and the performances of the new signings suggest they're going to be good players.
And Southampton won 2-0 at Stoke, continuing the theme of 2-0 away wins. Harwood Bellis playing a beautiful defence-splitting pass. Tom Fellows scampering in behind. And is there a Championship player that scampers more than Tom Fellows? His running style is one of the scamperiest I think I've ever seen.
He's got such a loose right arm.
Wonky elbow.
It comes so high.
Yeah.
You wouldn't want to be running behind him, I can tell you that.
I'm surprised he hasn't picked up more straight reds.
Me too, thinking about
elbows. Finn Azaz tapping in the ball across. Just more of that, please, Taylor Harwood Bellis, because he's currently part of a team that's failing and he hasn't looked great this season. But he's someone who, with an England cap and an England goal, a star of the youth teams. He's won promotion from this league before. He's worth a lot of money. I just want to see more of that, basically, from him, because that's what he's meant to be exceptionally good at, and it was very good. Flynn Downs scored while lying on his back, which doesn't happen very often. It was a bit of fun, that one. And Perez, the new Saints keeper, looks pretty decent based on some of the saves he's been pulling off, so that's been a good addition. I'm also excited to see that Shay Charles is back from his injury and is coming off the bench to get fit again, but it just looks a little healthier once they've won 2-0 here. Stoke just drifting down the table. 4 wins in their last 16, 9 defeats in that time, and only 13 goals in 16 league games is pretty bleak for them. Needs sorting. So, deadline day continues. We're going to be, as soon as we finish the pod, getting ready for our live stream for NTT20.com paid and free subscribers. you can be one of those by heading to ntt20.com, and you'll be able to watch back our 2-hour live stream if you're listening to this on Tuesday, for example. Last time we did this in early September, I had a few beers and got a bit ranty, which might put you off watching, but might make it sound more interesting than it otherwise would. So do join us. The League One and League Two recaps will be found wherever you found this one. Cheers. Go well.